Well, Fable 3, I've got my regrets. The original vision for Fable 3 that we all had was this grand opera. Because everyone used to say in black and white, who are you? You know, who are you? Do you play a character? And now we're answering that character. Well, Populous was the game that was born out of two-player. Me and someone called Glenn Corpus, we used to play the game every single day by linking two machines up with an RS-232 lead. And so really, for me, Populous was all about a multiplayer game rather than a single-player game. It was just the delight of building your forces up. You know, you started with one person, you had to build the land up, and then just going out and smashing your opponent. And I had this simple rule with Populous, right, the game's not finished until I can beat Glenn every time. I did have a method of victory, and it got me into an incredible amount of trouble. And, you know, this is a bit of a confession, because what I would do is I would spread out as quickly as possible, make castles as quickly as possible, and, you know, just dominate like that. And after the game came out, I was invited to Japan to play the national champion of Populous on stage. And I thought it would be, you know, a tiny little affair, but it was like an auditorium of about 2,000 people, and there was a camera on my face and a camera on my hand, and I hadn't played Populous for quite a few months, so I was a bit out of practice. And I thought, no problem, I put a cheat in the game, so I could get all the little people to sprog instantaneously, but it required me to move the mouse and press two keys on the keyboard. And because the camera was on my hand the whole time, I couldn't do the cheat, and I was beaten in 3 minutes. And I think that was it. Well, Theme Park was done by me and Demis Azarbis, and we did it at my house, and we did it in 9 months, and we had to do it in that time because he had to go off to university. And I think my favourite part was the roller coasters, just being able to build ridiculously dangerous roller coasters. And this incredibly simple thing we did, which was if you put too much salt on the chips, it made people more thirsty and they drank more drinks. And that, you know, it took 10 minutes to code, but actually it became almost a USP for Theme Park. The thing is, when you're developing games, especially the whole of my life, I've always been developing a game, and you kind of think, well, what am I going to do next as my next game? And was going over to America a lot, and, you know, when you went over on business, you kind of didn't know what to do, so you went to a theme park. And it was in one of those theme parks that I thought, you know what, wouldn't it be brilliant to be able to design your own theme park? And that's where the idea came from. But everyone thought that it was a crazy idea, really, because there was nothing like this idea, well, let's do a simulation, but not base it on actual accuracy and fact, let's base it on fun parts, designing a theme park. The problem with Theme Park, both its strength and its weakness, is we should have gone down a more high-resolution graphical path, because I think the shifted isometric look made it look a little bit too childish, whereas something like Roller Coaster Tycoon looked like a serious game. Roller Coaster Tycoon was very impressive, obviously it was very impressive, but it was a little bit too fiddly for me. Well, Dungeon Keeper is, you know, it's my third favourite game that I've developed, and we developed it, there was 7 of us, developed it at my house, and an intense crunch period you can imagine with Simon and Dean Carter, who later went on to do Fable. I think the favourite moment was the realisation that you were building something that things came and attacked you. We had this little simulation testbed where most of the game was mapped out. You know, you could kind of play the game. And then Mark Healy came in and he just he just put the most coarse graphics you could imagine. You know, there was the kinky mistress, there was horny, and, you know, Mark was always pushing the envelope of that. So I think it was the characters in the game that were the favourite. The worst part, really, and I'm only saying this because of what we've done in Masters of Albion, the worst part is the possession mechanic was fun, but it might as well not have been the game. It was just a gimmick, and so it's been a delight to go back to that again.
Are you a blessing or a curse?
Black and White was insanely hard to develop because we had this idea of we wanted to use AI, we wanted to have a HUD-less interface into the world, and we wanted to make it open world. And I think one of my favourite moments is we've been working for years, months and months and months, to get the engine tech just right. Because you've got to remember, back in those days, you didn't have Unreal or Unity, so you had to write everything yourself. And we managed to get the creature from Black and White in the game, and we got him in the game, and the creature's mind, we hadn't seen the creature in reality, and the creature woke up and he was standing there, and all he was doing was swiping down at his legs. We couldn't work out what was going on. Because the creature had been encoded so that the first thing the creature worried about was food, he looked around for the most nutritious thing around him, and the most nutritious thing was his own legs. And that's why he was swiping down, trying to grab his own legs. Insanely hard to design and develop that game because you had these two incredible forces in the game. There was the creature and the world, and they had to kind of unify together.
Another creature? Is it true? Are you real?
Well, I prefer to be, but personally I prefer to be evil, and the reason I prefer to be evil because most people, when they played it, played as good. They couldn't bring themselves to be evil. That is a real shame because we put a huge amount of effort as much effort into the evil side. You know, I'll give you an example in Black and White. There was one quest where you had one of the little villagers came out and I think they asked for a rock, and there was 35 different scenarios that the player could do. The player could pick up the rock and squash the person. The player could pick up a rock and smash the house. The player could get the creature over there and eat villagers. And most of them were evil sort of things. They weren't good ones. The good one was you delivered the rock. And so I tended to play evil. You know, a huge percentage will try a bit of evil, and then they've just been, you know, conditioned through the whole of their life to be good. Of course, we all have. And, you know, so it's only 10%. I don't know what it says about that 10% though. Well, it's the morphing of the hero, really. How the horns developed. It was always so easy to get the morphing for the evil side because it was, you know, red eyes and darkened skin and horns. The good side was a bit more tricky. You know, what do you look like when you're good? I mean, you've got a halo, of course, but you know, what else have you got? That was tricky. And I think my favourite bit was when you were playing it, when you first realised that your hero was changing to reflect. A lot of people knew this was going to happen, but when some people played it, you know, there was that moment that, oh my God, my hero looks evil or looks good. Well, Fable 2 is easy. It's about the dog. And I think my favourite moment was when we realised that this dog shouldn't be another weapon. It should be a companion. And when we originally implemented the dog, this bloody dog kept barking at everything and kept attacking everything, and anything that was a threat, it would go and attack, and it just felt like the most aggravating thing. And then we completely rewrote the dog systems, and we just made him, right, he's not a weapon, he's a companion. And he's a companion that will bark, but he won't bark all the time. And, you know, he became much better. And you know, that magical moment in development when you realise that less is more in something like the dog. Well, Fable 3 I've got my regrets for, because I think the original vision for Fable 3 that we all had was this grand opera of half the game being about getting to the throne and what things you were willing to do to get the throne, to get the crown. And the other half of the game were the consequences that you would have to pay for on your road to getting the crown. We never really quite nailed that, I didn't think. I still think that idea is a really strong idea. You know, if you said to me, right, in this game you become king of Albion, wow, that sounds fantastic. But, you know, you may have to do some Machiavellian, you know, quite unsavory things to grab the throne, and then you pay for all that afterwards. I think that could have been very good. Saying that, I think, you know, the team did a fantastic job on Fable 3. You know, the movies, it was so unlucky. The movies came out 18 months, I think, before YouTube really hit. And if we had had YouTube as a, you know, when we were developing the game, if we'd known that something like YouTube would have been out there, would have been a completely different experience, because it was fun being able to direct movies and run a movie studio. I felt we made a mistake, and it sounds like a ridiculous mistake, but it ended up costing the game a lot, I think. And that is, we made the game too compulsive. You know, there were too many things going on all the time, and you weren't able to sit back and just relax and spend a bit of time on your movie and, you know, all the little tweaks we allowed the player to do. So if we did the movies again now, I mean, I think it would be a completely different ballgame. We also had this terrible thing happen right at the end of development. It was published by Activision. You know, back in those days, you used to finish development about 6 weeks before the game came out, because they had to manufacture all the CDs. I'd gone off on some sort of press trip, and then I got this text saying that one of the testers who had tested had shown this shot up, and the shot they had was someone sitting on a toilet, which you could have, you know, you'd have a shot of them sitting on a toilet with a pair of purple underwear on, and then the camera was down there, and that made it look like you could see parts of their genitalia. Activision went absolutely crazy about stop the production of the CDs. Well, I had to fly back from this press tour with all these lawyers in this London office with pictures all over the wall, and there's these lawyers in suits going, "No, that looks like genitalia. Look, from that shot, that looks like genitalia." And so we had to remove the purple underwear from the game.
I'd like you to meet a boy called Milo.
Oh, what a shame about Milo. I mean, back in those days, the technology seemed impossible because we didn't have large language models. Nowadays, we have large language models, and we can ask these large language models any question we want.
I was thinking today you should let me beat you at football again. That is if you finished your homework. You have finished your school project.
And I think the trick that we used, we had access to all of the Microsoft technologies, and they had some early speech recognition and speech synthesis AI that we were using. I think the moment that I loved that no one really ever saw was the joy that you got from inspiring this young person. I mean, the problem is, at the time we released it, you know, there was a lot of dark comments about it. At that particular time, my son was about Milo's age, and I realized the joy of being a parent, the realization that everything that you did around your child, every statement you made, every time you sat next to him, every program you watched was inspiring and creating this little human being. And being able to get that feeling into a game was what we were really trying to get to. And we nailed it. We nailed some really magical moments of being able to give Milo things and him take them and look at them and seemingly make these intellectual leaps. it was cheating. We were cheating a lot in the game, but the feeling that you hopefully got from it was, oh my God, this person is being inspired by what I'm doing.
I could have just tried to catch some fish. Draw some pictures in my journal. Maybe I'd do okay this time.
I think that's a good idea.
I know AI is coming under a lot of bad press, and believe me, I mean, the AI slop I have seen, was stupid for the AI companies to release that. But this technology is an emergent technology, and for me, if we embrace it in the games industry, rather than say, no, we're never going to touch it, we're never going to look at it, we could discover some new things that we just aren't able to do now. So I think it's got a future, but we need to make it so that it doesn't produce this shit, to be honest with you. I mean, firstly, I really apologise for over-egging the centre of the cube. I mean, all I wanted to do is one simple statement: there's something amazing inside the cube. It should have been a bit of concept art, an original bit of concept art. That would have been enough. But you know what? What we never realised is how much enjoyment and communication people got from playing Curiosity. I mean, the fact that we had the complete retelling of the 9/11 tragedy through people just tapping away on the cube, making patterns on the side of the cube, was incredible. You know, Curiosity had, I think it had 800,000 concurrent players. And this is back, you know, in 2012 or something. And we never really, when we implemented, we never really thought that people would use it to communicate to each other. That was an awesome, awesome moment. I mean, you know, I'm going to be very careful. I don't want to spoil it. I mean, what we're trying to do is we asked ourselves really back quite a few years ago, because it's taken years and years to make. And we asked ourselves, what is a God game? You know, what really is a God game? And, you know, if the person who stumbled on it back in 1989, which I did with a game called Populous, and not being able to answer that succinctly, something's wrong. Our first notion was, well, a God game should be about freedom. The freedom to play the game how you want to. But there is a moment right at the very start, you're going to be a hero, and the first thing that you do in the game is you wander around in third person, and then you find this throne, and you sit on this is the first 5 minutes of the game, you sit on this throne, and you zoom into the land, and then you zoom back to the throne, and you have your hand amputated, so you have your big hand. Because everyone used to say, in black and white, who are you? You know, who are you? Do you play a character? And now we're answering that character. And then the realization after that is, you've got this hand. What can I do with it? And the first thing, we don't tell you what to do with it. We just let you explore what you can do with it. You can pick things up, you can smash things, you can destroy things, you can tidy up. I mean, tidying up is such a powerful thing in a game, actually, is making something look lovely, and that's before we tell you to do anything. So, I'm very proud of that opening moment.
Leave nothing in your path. Destroy! Oh, to tell you the truth, I didn't think you had it in you.